the way that we look at principled entrepreneurship is this is the way entrepreneurs should behave, right? And what we're trying to do to advance our culture is to educate and to have a bunch of principled entrepreneurs, for lack of a better term, running around the place, right? I mean, folks that have that judgment, that sense of urgency, that constancy of purpose, folks that are have highest integrity, they're good leaders. And one thing that we've learned as we've kind of migrated into our year 5 of our plan is that middle layer that requires most of our attention. And you can see depicted here this big PE and a bunch of small little PEs. And what that's saying is that, you know, from that operating VP to mill manager to their teams, we've got to pay particular attention to our leaders. Because it's nice when the mill manager goes out on the floor and shakes everybody's hand and talks to them. It's even, you know, it's nice when the operating VP comes and has town halls, talks about the state of the business and what we're doing. But that has a lifespan. What that employee sees on a day-to-day basis is their direct supervisor. And is that direct supervisor providing the leadership and the example that we want that's consistent with those 10 principles? Virtues trump technical skills. What does that mean? Well, probably in many of your industries, you've had this issue and struggle as well. What happens in the past with a person that's a get-her-done kind of person? Keeps the machine running at all costs. What do we do with those people? We promote them, right? And rightfully probably should, but sometimes we put them in leadership positions and maybe they're not ready to take on that responsibility. Or we put them in leadership positions and we don't develop them. That's a whole different world of being that technical expert or that individual contributor and now being responsible for 20 or 30 people, right? So, I mean, that's something that we're paying close attention to, and we're trying to be able to develop a lot of these folks and finding the right roles. There's equally the place for the person with technical skills. They add just as much value to the organization, but again, finding the right leadership. And where this kind of culminates for us is really making safety a value. We look at this as culture as an enabler to do more things. Obviously, with where we've progressed in 5 years as a company, there's a lot of things that have happened. Risk assessments, management systems, better reporting, better investigation, management of change, prioritization of the right things first. But culture enables a lot of these things to happen. And that's really kind of what we're saying here, is that we want people to value this. What are things that we value? There's no problem or conflict when we're talking about our family in one hand and maybe, you know, taking that vacation in the other, right? I mean, what are we going to do? We're always going to go to what we value. And that's what we're trying to do here. And you can see this is depicted with one of the posters that we have, some of the promotional aspects and campaigns that we do across our division, excuse me. Believe we can get to a better state. So as you're using that simplistic example, to me, the belief that you can get there is you've got to get some you got to get some runs across the plate. You got to get some wins on the board, right? And as you do that, that enables you to do other things, and it gets people buying into, yeah, we can do this, right? We don't have to have 100 injuries a year. And we can work toward an injury-free environment. We can go out and proactively do risk assessments and correct things before they cause harm. This is just kind of an indication of performance as we're kind of in our 5-year plan. The one thing that I'll tell you that's really the most important here is this learning event incident rate. This is a proactive measure for us. This is employees reporting substandard conditions or substandard practices or traditional near misses. And you can see 2007 isn't on this graph because we weren't ready to do it. No one trusted us. I mean, we may have gotten 100 near misses in a division of roughly 11,000 people that year. People weren't ready to do it. A little better in 2008, a little better in 2009, a little better in 2010. This allows people to report things proactively, risk rank them. Supervisor sees this, has a conversation with the person. we either resolve it on the floor, we shut the piece of equipment down, or it goes into a larger action database. The interesting thing here is that in 2008, this system, you can report things anonymously. And we got a lot of those in 2008. As you look at what we did in 2009, not so many. I mean, that's an indication that there's a trust there, things are getting better, leaderships are walking the talk, and we're delivering on the promise. So to me, that's the most important takeaway from this graph. And then finally, just I'll end with 2 slides that talk about one of our pilot mills. In 2007, we had a mill on the West Coast that would be on kind of your right side of your graph, which is not a good place to be. High injury rates, not a lot of good conformance around audits, very little risk assessment activity. Some leadership change there, some implementation of the MBM guiding principles, lots of working on the right things. And we did a culture assessment there back in 2007, and we decided late last year we would do the same. We would come back because this mill had made great progress. I mean, currently this mill has injury rates in the first quartile of our industry, which places them below 1. They've gone 1.1 million hours without a lost time incident. That's 13 months for them. It's a smaller mill. It's roughly around 450 people. So I was intrigued. There's a lot of things going on, but what's really changing? So we went out and did a cultural assessment. Part of that starts with an electronic survey, and then the real meat of it is going on site and doing focus groups. And some of the themes that the employees told us was production does not come higher or before safety now. That was different than 4 years ago. We realize that our leaders value safety. We know that we need to report injuries. We have full decision rights to intervene, shut a piece of equipment or a process down if we find something that's unsafe. These are all things that we had opposite answers just 4 years prior. So again, this was a good indicator of things are getting better and that our culture is starting to change. Now, we're not where we need to be yet. I'll be the first to admit that. But again, progress. And the last thing that I'll leave you with is the following slide. And I thought this just said volumes. When the electronic survey was over, this is the last question we asked. And I really don't need any explanation to this, but when that many people believe that the effort that mill and this company has put into health and safety, it tells you that things are getting better. It tells you that we're moving in the right direction. In closing, what I would tell you is those of you that have similar situations, maybe struggling with your culture, you're not alone. Some of the things that I've learned along the way is there is no silver bullet. And this is something we struggle with leaders even today because folks want that silver bullet. They want to say, have an incident rate of 3 this year, but by God, next year it'll be 0. Rarely does that happen. And if it does, it's usually not sustainable, right? So be patient. Understand where you're at. Understand your gaps. You know, put it out there for folks. It's good to get uncomfortable with this. You know, you want people to be dissatisfied because when they're dissatisfied, they can help you determine what's that better state, what are the things that you need to do to get there. So that's what I have for you today. I hope this was helpful, and I think at this point I'll turn it back over to Larry and we'll open it up for some questions.